Here.
Mrs. Marburger? Here. Mr. Millen?
Here.
Mr. Andrew?
Here. All right, we'll move on to visitors. If there's anybody here that would like to speak before we go into the meeting on something that's not on the meeting.
Yeah, Jim, just a quick question. Any updates
Yes.
on,
State
this is
name.
Matt, sorry, Matt Shapiro, I apologize, parent of the district. Just wondering if there's any updates on, now that there's a full board, if we'll be doing the task force
Well,
initiative?
we said we would seat the board first. We're actually not seated yet.
Oh, okay.
And then we will continue on in that direction after that's all gets done, so.
When does that happen, the seating of the board?
It could be shortly, it could be, we might wait till the,
No, we'll be a full board when Ron's here.
yeah, I know, but I mean, we can start to look into it. Or, you know, we may wait a little bit until we get some more names in. We don't have very many names in yet, so.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right, we'll continue on communications.
Yes, we have a lot of good things happening in the district. First, I'd like to have Mrs. Schaefer, and we had several students that participated in the National Science program through the FFA, and they're going to give you a little report tonight on that as well. Mrs. Schaefer?
Yep. First off, thanks for letting us come and talk to you guys tonight. We were very fortunate to have every student here be a national FFA Agri-Science Fair finalist, which the process begins at the state level. They win at the state level, and then they have to submit a national application to be able to be selected to represent at actually the National FFA Convention. And they picked just the top 25 out of the nation, and we were very fortunate to be able to have the most National Science Fair participant as any school in the nation this year. So I'm going to turn it over to our president, Tanner Mickey.
The Taylor FFA chapter was fortunate to have a very successful trip to convention, like Mrs. Schaefer said. We took a total of 50 students on our one-day trip where we take a bus so we took 50 students, which is a record number. And then for the whole week trip, which was 5 days long, we took 17 students, and all of us went on the full day trip. And then all 8 of us here were all national science fairs in our area. And we were fortunate enough to be named in the top 10 in each of our areas, so that was a pretty big accomplishment for us. And another one of our big accomplishments was we were the only chapter in the nation to have 8 kids that competed in the science fair, so that was a pretty big deal for us.
My name is Gracie Corso. My partner is Lance Dieklerk. We did a science fair project called Wasted, and it was about the problem of food waste in America. So we used the Taylorville FFA and regular students at our high school, and we had them throw their trash away like usual, and we divided it up into categories and weighed it, and the end number was our outcome of the project. We ended up getting 4th place in our social systems category, so we were very, very grateful and thankful that we were able to place 4th.
My name is Eric Schaefer, and I was able to compete at the National Science Fair as well. I did a study comparing the differing reproductive technologies in Angus cattle, and I was also able to place 4th. But the big thing I wanted to say is that I'm a transfer student. I came over from Pana last year, and it was one of probably the best decisions my parents and I have ever made. I've greatly enjoyed my experience at Taylorville High School, and if the events of the last couple weeks have shown anything, it's that Taylorville High School is full of a great and outstanding group of students and staff that are just willing to give the shirt off their back to help somebody.
The other students, if you just would say your name, we don't want to take up too much time. And okay, that's fine.
My name is Isabel Norris.
My name's Lily Schaefer.
My name's Connor Grant.
I'm Jet Nickery. I'm Lance Diekler.
King. And like Katie and I would like to say is thank you for the support. Thanks for letting us go to these types of things. I know we're away from school sometimes, but honestly, guys, Ms. King and I do not make decisions to take these kids away from school unless they are value-based and that the kids are going to get something valuable out of it. And hopefully we've not only taught them some life skills, but some maybe skills that they're going to be able to use in college and anywhere in the rest of their life. But thank you guys very much for listening.
We're not that pressed for time. I'd like to hear how the other people did
Sure.
with the project.
Sure, go ahead.
My partner Connor Grant and I, we did our project on comparing the different yields of different soybeans
received 10th in the nation?
My project was on the 5-second rule. So if you drop a piece of food on the floor for 5 seconds and you pick it up, it's still edible. This actually was proved to be false, so don't do that. But I got 8th in the nation with my project.
So I'm Jet Victory. I did my project with Tanner Mickey over here. We compared varying methods of estrus, synchronization, and beef cattle. And what that means is there's a few different ways to bring beef cattle in heat. We compared a more modern method with a traditional method. And in our experiment, we found that the more traditional method was more beneficial for what we were doing with it. And we ended up placing in the top 5 in the nation, so we were pretty happy with that.
I'm Lance Diekler, and like Gracie said, we weighed some trash and it was so pretty grateful for that.
So Connor, what kind of beans should we be planting?
Dicamba.
From your dad?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's the one that actually won out of 3. We actually did Liberty and Roundup, and
Okay.
Dicamba was actually our best one. So.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good. We wanted to just share that information with you because we have a very talented group of students. And it's just not necessarily, it just shows the discipline of agriculture throughout all disciplines at Taylorville High School. While we're on that, we do have some recognition of our Illinois scholars. It's that time of the year to recognize those scholars. I've included that in your packet for those students. McKenna Anderson, Blake Beckley, Courtney Carr, Elizabeth Curtin, Samantha Hodges, Sydney Larson, Jack Livingston, Nick Livingston, Jessica Mathias, Kara Rebecca, Taylor Sagal, Seth Sloan, Lene Thomas, Sophie Wade, Madison Wagner, Carter Walton, Jacob Wiseman, and Emily Young. Those students took the exam last year and have qualified as Illinois scholars, and that's something to be proud of these students that have achieved that. Also this evening, we did have some students that have qualified for All-State on the musical side, which is fantastic. They will be going up with our instructors to the annual music conference that will be happening. And in band, we had Keaton Hohenstein, we had Kara Rebecca, and we had Haley Rhodes and Carly Tracy. So that these students auditioned for this. And then in the chorus were Elizabeth Cody, Tyler Sherbert, Jordan Reeder, James Bettiger, Jessica Mathias for the All-State Chorus, and then the All-State Jazz Band, Blake Beckley, Connor Chase, Blake Rice, and Emily Thorpe. They will be at a festival in January, and when the All-State comes together. So these students have achieved quite an accomplishment themselves. We're very proud of these students as well. To be recognized as All-State musicians. That speaks volumes for our music program, our instructor Chris Gunn and Mr. Keith Chase, as well as the junior high musical staff as well that have contributed to this. So we're very proud of these students. At this time too, I would like to recognize all of our neighboring school districts that have chipped in and supported Taylorville following the storm that we had. We've had tremendous outsource from different school districts. There's many of them still hosting ball games and still contributing to missions for Taylorville and making those donations so that that money gets to where it needs to be. Our high school students, where they were able to work with individuals and cleanup, really stepped up to the plate with our staff and helping out within the disaster area itself. So we can be proud of our community, proud of our students. That night, Mr. Gunn, the band students, fortunately that parade got canceled, but we did have band students that had to spend the storm at Taylorville High School. So our staff handled that very well, and that's to be noted that they followed the protocol that they had during the storm, and that all was well, that nobody was injured. So as the Reverend said, we were truly blessed in this storm, even though we did have, you know, devastating disaster in some parts of our community. But the town did pull together, and we're still doing great things. A couple of other communications, you probably noticed, it was announced that the Hopper Foundation made a significant donation to our welding program. We will be adding a CNC plasma laser cutter to enhance our welding program. I visited with Ms. King. That piece of equipment should arrive in January, and they will set that up, and our students will be working on that in January. That's just one more piece of the puzzle with our manufacturing program and our technology program that is setting the Taylorville School District apart from other school districts within Christian County and within the state of Illinois as well. So we will be, once we get that piece of equipment up and running, we will invite you out there to see the manufacturing protocol for that at Taylorville High School. Also, we are getting close to having our wood manufacturing room about operational. We're finishing up some of the construction that our kids are doing. It's doing it within the program, and we hope to have that fully operational hopefully after Christmas as well, when we get all of the equipment set up there. So a lot of good things happening there. We did receive we do have Ameren here this evening to talk about an easement, but we were very blessed that our food service department, Mrs. German, filled out an application for Ameren customers in Taylorville. And we picked up $62,334.39 in grants to upgrade Memorial cafeteria equipment and the junior high cafeteria equipment. That's money that we do not have to spend to update equipment. And so we applied for that, and we're very fortunate to be that Ameren is supporting the programs from what we do. So so you can see we had a very good week, counting the Hopper donation of $30,000 and the Ameren grant for our school programs. That's money that we can use for our educational programs and to provide updated equipment. So you can see it's been a very good month. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
I got a question
Yes.
for you. Earlier we had talked about those virtual welders. Have we ever gone any farther on any of that?
Yes, we're working on that. I know Mr. Kunzman's like, whoa. No, we are. One of the things that we wanted to do, that's part of our program in terms of building up our welding program. And we will be putting that together. He's got, not to steal his thunder, but he'll be here in January, and we'll be talking about future of where we're going with the program. But in terms of the CNC machine, the plasma cutting machine, we definitely want to start to introduce welding to younger students, in our freshmen, in that type of situation, so we can expose them to that. And then we will also be working with Lincoln Land in the spring as well. With the Lincoln Land has that brand new welding facility out there that they constructed. So we've been working with Lincoln Land in terms of some cross programs that we would have with Lincoln Land, so that we can provide a quality program at Taylorville High School, but we can get further instruction through certificated programs through Lincoln Land, so that they can come out of our school system and go weld at wherever they may want to weld. So we're currently working on that, Jim. We will be putting together that package with Lincoln Land in the spring as well. We're working on some other opportunities within our manufacturing program that we're hoping will come to fruition in terms of that. Mr. Andrick did see the virtual 3D welders when we toured U46. It was Mr. Hutchison, Mr. Bloomquist, Mr. Andrick, and Mr. Kuntzman. We went to U46 and toured their precision manufacturing program. One of the areas that they have a different need in their area, but welding is a need wherever you're at in terms of what you can produce with welders. We saw before they could actually go in and weld, they had to have an 80% proficiency on the virtual welding. And you could do all 3 welds, MIG, TIG, and stick virtually. And then before they were given gas and real metal, they had to be proficient. And the teacher could keep a portfolio on every student's welding so they knew exactly where they were at. You can see what technology is doing now, the virtual reality of technology itself. It goes hand in hand with the lab that we're running at Taylorville Junior High School and the lab that we're running at Taylorville High School. Tonight you're going to see our tech integration specialists are going to talk a little bit about how that's getting into our curriculum. That also, I don't know if many of you did go see the Project Lead the Way at Taylorville Junior High School. It was a fantastic evening that night to see what our kids are building at Taylorville Junior High School. They're actually problem solving, and they're actually having to apply knowledge in that. So yes, technology does have an impact on one's ability to learn. Provides experiences and opportunities for kids. And we're doing that in this school district, and we're quite fortunate to have some donors that believe in the school system. And I just read an article this evening. The reason we're able to do this is because we have people that believe in our programs. They believe in our educational programs, and they believe in what we're doing. And if you look at the amount of money that's been invested into the Taylorville School District from the private side, it's pretty substantial. And that's why we're able to do the things that we're able to do. Mrs. Schaefer in the Ag program is also able to bring in other amounts of money to supplement our curriculum. And so when you look at it at the end of the day, we're doing a lot of great things for kids. And that Project Lead the Way is going to continue to grow at the junior high, as well as at Taylorville High School with the opportunities. So tonight you're going to hear about some of these expanded opportunities that we have in our elementary program through the 12th grade. So that's a pretty significant situation. But yes, we'll be talking about virtual welders next month, Jim.
Okay. All right, we'll continue on then with the consent agenda. Does everybody have a chance to look over the minutes? Any additions or changes? Okay, we'll go on to the claims.
Nothing unusual this month, Jim. Last month was heavy because we had to make our loan payments.
Does anybody have any questions on claims? Okay, treasurer's report?
Yeah, we're still tracking. We still have no categorical payments for this year, okay? It's December, and the good thing is we only budgeted 2, okay? Because we picked up the one from last year. So between now and May, we hope to pick 2, okay? So we'll see where that goes. We really haven't seen any indication that that's coming soon, have we, Mrs. Chairman? No. So, and remember, those categorical payments are over $1 million, okay? So those are the situations that, you know, we do monitor. Most of that's transportation, okay, that we have, and then we do have some special education tied to that in the private facility and orphanage. Orphanage and transportation are the big ones on that, but I do want to report to you that we haven't got a categorical yet. We got the one that was owed last year. Okay. So, but Mrs. German and I are working on a back plan. We only have 2, we only budgeted 2. So, and typically we do pick up our 3 payments in that, so the budget has not been, you know, as long as we get 2, we've met our budget. So that's where we want to be in this situation. And then, you know, if not, we've got other mechanisms to make transportation whole that we're working on now, just in the event that it doesn't happen. And I don't know, this is a lame duck session, and you got a new governor coming in and a new legislature, and then we've got to have that conversation about we need 300 million to make that formula work, okay? So that's gonna be the next task. They're gonna have to come up with 300 million to make the new formula work. 350 would be nice, but that's for property tax relief, that's built in there, but 300 million is the go number that we need. There has been talk, I was involved in a meeting last week on pension reform. That is going to have to be a discussion at some point. I don't know when that's going to happen, but in terms of what that looks like, if something doesn't, the ramp is the ramp, but now it's ramped to the point where the ramp's not sustainable. And ultimately, as we were presenting, that when you look at it, at some point, the revenue that comes into the state of Illinois, there's a huge gap between making the pension payment and that. Well, as we pointed out to the legislative body, they know this. The only way you're gonna get there is you're gonna have to cut services, right? Well, what is your biggest service organization in your state? It's called K-12s. They take the lion's share. Higher ed is out of the equation. I saw a statistic that they've cut higher ed by 50% in the state of Illinois, and it shows when you look at it overall in terms of number of students, tuition costs, those types of things. They had to, you know, they made their choices. But at some point in time, it collapses because there's just not enough. The gap is so significant that it can't meet the pension obligations. So they've been presented a plan to take a look at how they can do that. They're vetting and doing the things that they have to do, but sooner or later, somebody's got to do it. They got to do something because the ramp is doing exactly what the ramp was designed to do, and that's why they kicked the can down the road. And we're living in kicking the can down the road. Didn't have to make payments back then. Kick the can down the road now, ramp it up, and now it's really ramped up. And it's kind of interesting to see the study. I'll send that to you folks to see the study. It's actually, when you look at the actual cost of salaries, it's decreased by 5%. When you look at it, when you look at the bottom line of this thing, right? It's not the salaries, it's not the benefits, it's the ramp, it's the unfunded liability that's doing the damage here. So we've got a group, and I'm part of a group of superintendents that are working on this with Ralph Martiri, with Pritzker's team, and a group of senators and House members that we're having conversation, but we had a long conversation last week on this matter. And this is something that does have an impact, you know, in terms of where that's at. Now, whether that gets done in the lame duck session, I don't know whether they'll move that forward. It might make sense to do something in the lame duck, because if I'm not there, it doesn't matter if I vote to do whatever the plan is, right? To do nothing's really not an object, right? We know what the ramp's doing, okay? And that's legitimate. So, you know, that's where we are. I will be hosting a meeting next Thursday with a group of superintendents with Senator Menard, and we're going to begin to have some conversation within his district on conversation about these topics and other topics that relate to school finance. So we will be hosting that here at the unit office next Thursday. So it will be a good work session with that. But other than that, Mr. Hendrick, that's all I have at this point in time on the financial front.
Okay.
Other than the fact that we're in good shape, we're cash flowing positive.
On personnel.
Yes, in your packet, there was a personnel sheet. There were no changes to that personnel sheet. Resignations, Melinda Clayton Cook at Taylorville High School, effective November 21, 2018. Jenny Patton, Secretary, Memorial School, effective November 21, 2018. Recommendation to employ Michelle Rexroad, Taylorville High School cheer coach for half the year, and then Melinda Clayton, 5.75, Secretary, Memorial Elementary School. Mrs. Clayton took the secretary's position at Memorial. That's your personnel sheet.
Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? Mr. Connell, second. Ms. Marburger, roll call.
Mrs. Eber?
Yes.
Mrs. Marburger? Yes. Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrick?
Yes. All right, we'll continue on with the old business, and first on that will be to seat our new board member, Dr. Meiser.
We'll take your oath of office. Mr. Hendrick will.
I've got to read this long thing, you got to repeat it.
Don't stumble on any of the big words.
Okay. I, name,
Ronald Meiser,
do solemnly
do
swear
solemnly swear
that I will faithfully discharge
that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of member of the Board of
the
Education
duty of the office of the Board of Education
of Taylorville Community Unit School District 3
of Taylorville Community District Number 3
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the laws of the State of Illinois
and the laws of the State of Illinois,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
I further swear that
I further swear that
I shall respect taxpayers' interests.
say that one again, Richard.
I shall respect taxpayers' interests
Taxpayers' interest
by serving as a faithful protector
by serving as a faithful protector
of the school district's assets.
of the school district's assets.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression. Shall encourage
I shall encourage
and respect
and respect
the free expression
the free
expressions
expressions
of opinion by my fellow board members
opinions of my fellow board members
and others who seek a hearing before the board
and others who seek a hearing before the board
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall recognize that a board member
I will recognize under board members
has no legal authority
as no legal authority,
as an individual,
as an individual,
and that decisions can be made
and that decisions can be made
only by a majority vote
only by a majority vote
in a public board meeting.
at a public board meeting.
And I shall abide
And I shall abide
by majority decisions
by the majority decisions
of the board
of the board
while retaining the right
while retaining the right
to seek changes
to seek changes
in such decisions
in such decisions
through ethical and constructive
Oh,
channels.
and construct, okay.
It's it.
You're now a member of the
Now
Board
I'm
of
a member.
Education.
You know, I gotta say this. I was having Chinese after church, and I opened up one of these fortune cookies that says, "Welcome to the change coming in your life soon." I said that to my wife, and I said, "Okay." The school board does have that effect.
Yes, it does.
All right, consideration of the 2018 tax levy to be filed.
Yeah, within your packet is the copy of the levy that we will file, or Mrs. Sherman will file with the clerk's office to be filed. I think we've had a presentation in November and another presentation, we had a presentation before that, and a presentation in November on the tax levy. There's been no change to those numbers. We just need to adopt that.
Do we have a motion? Mr. Milling, second, Mr. Turner. Roll call vote?
Mrs. Ebert?
Yes.
Mrs. Marlowe?
Yes.
Ms. McConnell?
Yes.
Mr. Milling?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrick?
Yes. And the reason that you weren't called on that is because it was old business.
Yep.
So now you're on full now.
I gotta make a decision.
That's right. All right, starting with the new business,
Yes.
we have, Mrs.
D. Hortenstein.
Hortenstein from Ameren here to speak about, wanting to put a structure around the meter at the, junior high.
Yes.
For safety reasons, we'd like her to explain it.
Do I need to stand or can I?
You can sit.
Okay. Sit,
In your
okay.
packet, you do have the information that was sent to us. As you know that, I'll give a little history of this thing. When we redid North and the junior high, that is the main gas feed for both facilities on that. And if you notice, it's when you drive up on E, you can see the, we call it the utility, I guess, where we get the gas. And so Ameren has approached us about putting up a structure there for safety purposes.
Yes.
And I will let you go ahead, Dee.
It's gonna be a 7-foot, chain link fence with barbed wire on top, and I sent a picture, if that was included in the packet, maybe. And, I think the easement's 10 foot by 24 foot, and it will have a gate on the west side for entry if they have to get in there and do any maintenance, but it was installed in 1961, I believe, which at the time, they may have thought it was road right of way, and they installed it thinking it was on franchise. So when they went to have me check for an easement to put a fence up, I did not locate an easement, and of course it was identified as being on on the school district property, so I approached them about acquiring the easement, so.
Yeah, it's something that we need to do.
For safety purposes.
It's just good safety business. It is a pretty big service that sits there. And particularly it with the fact that it's serving, 2 facilities now, where before North was an electric system, and with that situation. Now, you do remember that we did have, for you other board members, Mr. Andrew will remember, and Mr. Milling will remember, we did have underneath of the walk, it had nothing to do with Ameren, but underneath of the entryway of the gym, we had a break, and it was in the summer, so we had replaced all of with plastic pipe from the main service. Ameren helped us, we bored it, and it's all been updated line from the service to the buildings. North would be a new service there that was put in at that point in time. So this is just a good precautionary measure, and we need to do it legally. They can't put something up without the
Without
easement.
the easement.
Does anybody on the board have any questions for Ms.
I have
Hortenstein?
a question. Are there existing ballards there now?
No,
Will there be with this installation?
they were not going to put any up, just the fence up.
There's not a lot of traffic on that road. I would just ask you to look in to see if possibly you might wanna just stick a couple ballards in there,
Okay.
because if you've been around one of these when they went up, it's not fun.
Yeah.
And if somebody were to go off that road and cascade even through your fence and hit that unit, segregate that, could cause a major problem. So I would just request you look at that. I think it would be just a couple.
I actually asked because the picture I provided had,
Had a minute.
I had a minute, and I actually asked them, in case this comes up in I get questioned if you're going to put them in there, I wanted to know, and they had not intended to, but I'll ask them about doing so.
Certainly wouldn't argue if they did. It would be a good idea. Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, do I have a motion to grant the easement, Ms. Ebert, second, Mr. Milling? Do a roll call vote?
Dr. Miser?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebert?
Yes.
Mrs. Marlowe?
Yes.
Ms. McConnell?
Yes.
Mr. Milling?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrick?
Yes. All right, consideration of the HLS junior high window replacement project.
Yes, we've had several conversations on this in the past, even before we even, yeah, we'll see you, thank you. And that was part of the original plan when we updated North Elementary and the HVAC system at North Central in the junior high. That we replaced partial windows at Taylorville Junior High School. We replaced the band room windows, and we replaced the art room windows at that point in time when we did that project, as well as in the 5th grade hallway. If you've been in the junior high, you know that hallway that sits off of the library that faces in the sun, that's extremely hot. And we did put in a windows that had a series of reflectors that reflects the sunlight off of the window. So that's kept that much cooler there. The next phase of the project then is to pick up on the shop side where the old industrial arts windows are. Those need to be replaced. Those are leaking at this point. Those were original windows at both North and the junior high. We're dealing with original windows. And at North, when we did replace all the windows at North, we had parted out everything we could take out of South Elementary. That was part of the days when we were living lean. We cannibalized Mount Auburn facility and we cannibalized South to keep North and the junior high going. They both had the same heating systems. We couldn't buy parts for the heating systems anymore, and Mr. Altman couldn't make them anymore, so we were taking parts out of South to keep the facilities going. We took the window parts out. We have retroed the junior high windows with as much salvageable window parts as we could out of South. And now we're to the point on the energy savings on the back side of the junior high. We're going to take the shop windows. We're going to take all of the windows on the northwest, on the west side of that, all of the external windows that are into the wind. And then we have a gym window in front that needs to be replaced. So that is the next phase of the junior high window projects, to shore up those windows. Then we will come back at another time and pick up all the rest of the remaining inside windows. Those will be out of the wind. We'll be able to part what we need to part to do that. These windows do have asbestos. They have to be abated. All of the caulk's been tested. We know that. We had to do the same thing at North. You'll remember, if you look out there, we had guys in a truck and they're in their oxygen suits and they have their masks on and they're abating the caulk, okay, out of the windows. And those all have to be taken out and abated as part of the process. So that's just part of the deal. Because they have to test that by law. They tested it. We know it's hot because of the relationship of the other windows in the building. It's of the same vintage, of the same thing, so we know that the windows are hot. And then that abater disposes of glass and the windows. They have to take care of that situation in terms of that. The contractor will be L&M Glass out of Taylorville. It's a local company. They did the North School windows as well as the junior high windows. The abater is Environmental Resources. They were the abating actual group. As you'll remember, we're going to address this situation with this window abatement. We'll leave the heating units in place, and the teachers can use those as storage, so we're not abating those existing units. And then we have the natural air. If you look on the bottom of North's windows, we removed that and they put block glass in there. So those are part of the situation. The total bid project includes taking the windows out, rebuilding the lintels if they have to be rebuilt, putting new windows in, painting, patching, sealing, and the whole kit and caboodle. Yes, Doug?
Bulletproof? This is glass bulletproof?
No.
Okay, not bulletproof.
But there is a film that can go over the top of those.
Okay, I was gonna say they did that up
Yes.
when my sister went to school.
Uh-huh.
They took those windows out and they used bulletproof.
In terms of that.
And this will all be done in the
It'll
summer.
be done in July. And the way that this will be scheduled, that this will not affect your budget, as we talk to you, that will be into next year's budget. Because we currently had the high school boiler project on this year's budget. So we will not exceed that portion of the budget. We'll start it in July, and therefore it flows. That's how we do it. The project costs, we do have the money available to do that. There will be no borrowing to do that. And it's just part of the health, life, safety project. Amoresco will be overseeing it, but we have local companies that will be doing the work and that type of situation. So,
And this costs $700,000, was
no,
that?
no, this costs
This phase is
$358,984 to be exact.
But was it the second part you were also estimating to be the same cost?
Will be less because we have fewer windows. It depends upon the cost. The original estimate to do the windows, and then we've had, I don't know, how many hurricanes that have come through? And tornadoes and different things, so that also has an impact on the price and the cost of things.
And it's aluminum, so you
Yeah,
have
Yeah,
that part of it.
that next phase, it all depends on when you do it, whether
All
it's next
depends
year
on
or
that.
later on.
But it's out of the wind, and it will be energy efficient. The main thing is to get this closed in. You've got 1,135 square feet of windows. So there's quite a bit of windows that need to be replaced. These are original windows.
It's gonna help our energy.
It's gonna help the energy. That's how we're gonna pay for these back, is off energy savings.
And these were
to
bidded
do
out
this.
sometime before I got on the board, I assume?
It just went through the bid process right now. Through
We
the
had,
process.
we had talked about it, the planning of it, but.
Right, but
You
that's
get
what I'm
your
saying,
bids, yes.
you bidded it out, and this is the two that,
Yep.
Any other discussion?
No, other than I'll make a motion and do it.
Okay, that's okay. You can abstain when we get
Yeah, I
that.
don't think you'll want me voting.
Do we have a second? Dr. Miser, sorry. Roll call.
Dr. Meisner?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebert?
Yes.
Mrs. Marburger? Abstain. Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Mr. Milling?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Ender?
Yes. Okay, next up is the technology integration presentation.
Yeah, I think you're going to be in for a treat this evening with what's happening within our classrooms. This will give you, they've basically had since right at the start of school, right? So you're getting your feet wet. They have made presentations throughout the state. They've invited other school districts in to tour our facilities and have worked with other teachers. So I don't know who's going first, Mrs. Reindl? Mrs. Reindl is our elementary through 6th grade, and 7th, 8th, or 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. They're both kind of interchangeable. And they've done a great job for us in their first real effort at this. So enjoy the oh, I put the caps on. For the thing, Tammy. I think so. There you go. There you go.
Okay, I first just kind of wanted to start off and talk about places where you can find some of my information. I have created a technology integration website. Parents, students, and teachers are able to find my website by logging into the Taylorville Schools webpage. I also always take pictures anytime I go within the classroom. I like to post the pictures on Instagram, Facebook, Taylorville Tech, if you want to follow me, and Rhino 5th on Twitter. I recently started a podcast. Dr. Furstendown was talking about Mrs. Worf and Mr. Endrick's STEM night at the junior high. I was privileged enough to do a podcast with a couple of her students prior to the STEM night. So they got to talk about engineering and how important it is and how it's gonna help them later on in life. Some other things that I've been doing, I have presented at IETC with Mrs. Kunzman for the last 3 years. This year we presented on digital escapes. Our session, we usually present one 50-minute session one day out of the 2 days. This year our session was booked up prior to presenting, so they asked us to present a second session on a second day. The digital escape went well. Teachers was very successful. There were various teachers in many school districts that have already contacted me and want ideas on how to do some digital escapes. I've also provided professional development for the teachers at the Taylorville Junior High School. Last year we were fortunate enough to get the Z-Space machines in the STEM lab. Unfortunately, a lot of the teachers weren't using the STEM lab because they were unfamiliar with the Z-Space machines and the huddle stations. So I felt it was important to provide them with some professional development, teaching them how to use the machines in the STEM lab. I also showed them how to use some different apps on the iPad to use with the green screen and the Google Expeditions. I found this to be pretty successful. Mrs. Miller, you can attest that we've had several teachers now going in to the STEM lab using these various technology tools.
So, Tammy,
Yes.
so would you point out that what each of these means, especially that green space, would you talk a little bit about what we're doing with green?
The green
You're
screen.
probably- you're
I'm
probably
gonna get to
there.
that, yes.
All right, you know me, I'm just a curious guy, right, Mrs. Lionel?
Yes,
Okay,
I
I
am
will
gonna
quit
get to
interrupting.
that.
I will quit interrupting and let you.
I started off with the social studies department as far as professional development went, because last year at the end of the year I sat on the social studies committee, and they were ones that said we don't use the STEM lab because we're not even sure how to use it or how to incorporate it with our curriculum. And so the idea of the professional development was to help guide them and show them different ways that they can use it in their curriculum. Then I went to 5th grade. 5th grade, they weren't using it a lot because the STEM lab was located on the other side of the junior high. And so I thought it was important that they could see how the machines worked, how they could incorporate it, and then maybe we could get them down there. And like I said, it's been very successful.
So is it busy every single hour of the day?
It's busy a lot. I wouldn't say every single hour. Mrs. Dwarf and Mr. Andrick have it first hour and 7th and 8th hour.
8th and 9th.
So a lot of times teachers book it the other hours, but I wouldn't say every hour. But it's busy a lot. And anytime that they need help using any of the machines or helping set up a curriculum, and I'll get to that too, I'll show you some different activities that we've done in there. Also, Pana Institute asked us to bring a couple of our machines over during Teacher Institute Day and let teachers show them how some of the machines work and let them have kind of like a play day with some of the machines. Had several teachers from Taylorville and various surrounding areas come and view our machines and then asked to come and visit our STEM lab. At the beginning of the year, we got a thing on Rochester STEM Fair asking if we wanted to bring some kids to represent Taylorville School District and present on the Z-Space machine. I wrote a proposal up. We were fortunate enough to get accepted. I got to pick a couple of 7th graders and a couple of 8th graders to attend the Rochester STEM Fair. And I'm gonna show you, prior to attending the Rochester STEM Fair, they had to work with me for a couple weeks and we had to create the poster board. I actually took them down, worked with them on the Z-Space machine, worked with them on different programs that they could present. And then at the Rochester STEM Fair, they had various students, parents, teachers come and visit the Z-Space machine, and they were able to present. I was just there supervising. At the beginning of the year, Mrs. Miller had a connection with Pana School District. They had already managed to get the showing of Screenagers, which is a digital age movie showing parents how screen time and too much screen time, how that can affect your student or your child. She asked me to help out a little bit. Some of the things that I did to help out with the Screenagers was basically contact the Breeze, let them know that we were invited to the showing. I contacted the radio station, I printed and helped pass out flyers during our open house, and I just tried to encourage any parent and the students, gave out flyers to student council, and just tried to encourage anyone to show up. And then high school had a career day, and I was just contacted just to come and help do some help hook up some technical things. And several presenters were Skyping in or doing Google Hangouts, and so I helped to get the presenters online for some of the teachers. Those are just some of the things that I've done as far as helping to get the community out there and the school district out there with some of the machines and stuff. Some of the things I've actually done in the classroom, in Stonington, teachers have Dash robots, and so I helped with a play day teaching teachers how to use the Dash robots, how it helps with coding. First and second grade are lucky enough to log in this year to their own Google Chromebook, and so I went around to first and second grade classrooms at Stonington, helped log them in, taught them their login, worked with them. Mrs. Dietz invited me for a STEM day that she was doing at Stonington, and when I went to her STEM day, she had a center where the kids were going to pick cards and actually create things using Legos, which was wonderful. And I just said to her, how about use Google Drawing? They can pull some cards doing that, and I can work with them and teach them a little bit about Google Drawing. And so I worked with the kids on how to create shapes in Google Drawings and use the color and just some basic skills like that with first grade at Stonington. And then because of the PANA Institute, several of the Stonington teachers came over and saw the expeditions at the Institute, and they went back to their administrator asking if they could get some of the Google Expedition, which are virtual reality glasses, over at their school. So Mr. Kunzman had the cart transported over to Stonington School for a couple of days, and I was lucky enough to do Google Expeditions with pre-K through second grade, and we even did a Google Expedition with the FACES class. This was probably one of my better experiences with the pre-K and the FACES group, because we did a Santa's journey, and they were just so excited seeing Santa, and it just was the best expedition I think I've ever done. North, first and second grade at North also have been logging into their own accounts. This has been beneficial because it's going to provide a portfolio. These first and second graders that have their own accounts will have their own accounts all the way through 12th grade. So they're actually building their portfolio as they go throughout school. Also, it's kind of beneficial to the teachers because the teachers, I trained first and second grade teachers on using Google Classroom. So some of them have been using Google Classroom where they can put the assignments out to their students. Kindergarten, I was asked to come over and do coding with kindergarten last week because we had Hour of Code. So I went in and I created direction cards and worked with the kindergartners on actually following directions. We talked about why it's important to follow directions, and then I tried to get them to understand how that has a lot to do with coding, how if you don't code the correct way, that your program's not going to work correctly. And so we did an activity where they were interacting, and then we actually got onto a coding program on the Promethean boards and the smart boards, and together we would code Santa through mazes to get to presents.
How quick are they picking it up in kindergarten?
Some classes very quick. They got to several levels. Other classes struggled, but part of their struggle was they weren't reading as well. When I did the flip cards, I used arrows and like arrow one step this way and backwards arrows. And they have arrows on there, but they were trying to read the words, and so some of them weren't quite reading yet, so they struggled somewhat. But then I had other classes that could read like crazy, and they were really getting the coding. And they were getting excited. Every time they got Santa to the present, they were getting excited wanting to do another lesson. So, second grade at North, they present a academic vocabulary, what is it? Do you know, Mrs. Brown? Vocabulary parade. And so, Mrs. Thomas just asked me to come in. She said my kids have to create Google Slides for this academic vocabulary parade. They don't know how to use the Google Slides. And so what I did was I created a Google Slides scavenger hunt. I went into her classroom and I worked with them on different skills on Google Slides, like inserting an image and using word art and adding color, some of your basic skills. So when it comes time for their vocabulary parade, they can create their own Google Slide. Memorial, Andy Menard came to visit and see some of the STEM equipment at the beginning of the year at Memorial. We went in and we used the Google Expeditions. I contacted a few third grade teachers. They were working on bridges at that time. And so we took the Google Expeditions a step farther, and they started to use a CAD program, Tinkercad. So the students were put into groups and they had to research different types of bridges, and then they created 5 different bridges on Tinkercad. We printed those 5 bridges. This actually allowed them to do a lot of research. They had to collaborate, they had to be creative, they had to analyze because they had to make sure it's on the work plane correctly. It was a trial and error kind of thing because I would print one and I would show them why it didn't print correctly because it wasn't on the work plane flat or whatever, and then they were learning to turn the bridges sideways, and so it was a lot of critical thinking skills. And 4th grade, I've been in there a few times. They were visiting the Lincoln sites as on a field trip, so they asked me to come in prior. I found a Ford's Theater Google Expedition, very good expedition. They actually got to walk in the path that Lincoln walked in prior to being shot, and then they actually got to walk in the path of John Wilkes Booth, how he jumped from the stage to the floor, and it was they got to see the bed that Lincoln died in, and it was a good expedition. Some other things that I've done at Memorial, I've worked with the students with Google Drawings, some different tips and tricks. We've done a couple of mystery hangouts. A mystery hangout is where you hang out with classes from different states around the world. And it's like the 20 question game where you get to ask a question, they get to ask a question, yes, no questions. And the first one to figure out which state the other one's from wins the game kind of thing. So we did a little mystery hangout, and 4th grade, I've also done Tinkercad with them. Last week, like I said, was our Code Week. So I teamed up with Mrs. Leonard from the high school. She has a computer science class and a web design class. And her and I talked, we got together, I got a hold of Mrs. Gansey, and we set it up to take the high school over to Memorial School. And they did our code with 3rd and 4th graders. It was a little bit longer than an hour, but they used Bloxels, which are colored blocks that you put on a grid. So the kids would put the blocks on the grid, and then we used the iPads from the junior high and took pictures, and it created a video game. They were actually creating several sections to their video games. So this was a very good experience, not only for the 3rd and 4th graders, but to see some of the high schoolers with these 3rd and 4th graders was amazing. Then during lunchtime, I was talking to the high school, and we talked about different ways to do this better next time, and what other grades could they do some of this stuff with. They were just really excited and really enjoyed that. I did send this to the paper. She was getting a hold of Mrs. Leonard because she wanted some names and stuff, so you probably should be seeing it up here in the paper. Junior high, we started with Chromebook deployment, was very successful, had parent nights for the parents to talk to them about the rules and regulations, passed out Chromebooks. 5th grade, we started working with Google Expeditions. Some of the things we did with the virtual reality was Native American virtual reality. We've done the periodic table, and they've done the human body. They did the digestive system, the circulatory system, and the respiratory system. I then teamed up with Mr. Koniak, talked to him about walking the 5th graders over to the high school, and we walked them over to the high school so they got to see the anatomage table. And he got to pull up all the different systems so they could actually see it on the table. One thing I would change about this, after talking to those high school students and how involved they got with the 3rd and 4th graders and just that experience, one thing I would change about this, instead of having Mr. Koniak just present the table, I would maybe like to have a high school class in there, and maybe they could team up and work with some of them on the Z-Space machine, some of them on the table, and do a whole curriculum. Yeah, I mean, the kids enjoyed the table. They thought it was really something, but just watching those kids interact with the high school. And then Mrs. Harker's 5th grade special ed class, she was reading a book, and they were reading something about the Empire State Building. So I brought the Google Expeditions in there, and those students actually got to go to the top of the Empire State Building. 6th grade, Mrs. Elliott came to me. She was doing Egypt. She's one that I provided some professional development. We went into the STEM lab. They did some augmented reality, which is still the Google Expedition devices, only the kids can handhold them, and they can turn they turned Egyptian tools different ways and could do different things with Egyptian tools on their own. I came up with a curriculum and a worksheet that they had to fill out while doing the augmented reality. We also did some virtual reality with Egypt, and then Mr. Hill has the other 6th grade classes. We went into the STEM lab, took it a little step further. We did some things with pyramids on the Z-Space machines. He had them cutting and gluing and creating pyramids and writing and encryptions and things like that in the STEM lab. 7th grade, we've done some augmented reality and virtual reality as well. We've, we have done volcanoes, tectonic plates, different things like that. Also with 7th grade, we're starting to use a Clickers program. That's a card that the girl's holding there. The cards have different designs that you turn in different ways. Teachers can assess students using this Clickers program. They put the problem up on the board. The kids hold up the cards. She scans the room with the device, and it will tell them who got what right and who got what wrong. We've also began using ClassFlow. ClassFlow is with our Promethean board. ClassFlow is with our Promethean boards, our Promethean projectors. Basically, teachers can put problems up on the Promethean projector, and students can send their answer through their Chromebook with ClassFlow. And 7th grade, Mrs. Spoyle, one of my teachers at the junior high, very reluctant in using any type of technology. And she will tell you that. I talked her into doing a Mr. Hangout. I had a teacher from another state asking me, please, will you do a Mr. Hangout with us? So I begged her to. She was like, sure. Went into her classroom. We did a Mr. Hangout. These 7th graders were using context clues and trying to figure out things because the kids were in shorts and they were looking at designs on their shirt. So then they were like, oh, I know where this class is from. They're from South Carolina. So then they were asking not so intelligent questions because they assumed they knew where they were at, and they were going against a 4th grade group. Well, the 4th grade was still asking the questions that they wanted to. Well, then when it came time to guess the state, they guessed the wrong state. They weren't from South Carolina. The kid had wore a South Carolina shirt to throw them off. So then they were like, they got beat by 4th graders. They were not happy. But I will say Mrs. Boyle has asked me to come back into her classroom. So that would, I feel it's successful. The green screen. One of the projects that Mrs. Rice is working on in her 7th grade geography classes, the kids are actually doing reports on Taylorville. So they pulled in presenters. The mayor came in, they interviewed the mayor. They were able to put the courthouse behind the mayor and do a short video clip interviewing the mayor. They're doing the different schools. They've contacted all the principals in the different schools, and so they're putting the different schools behind them. I'm now working with her in her classroom, and we're working on video editing to make this one big video about Taylorville. It's a long process, but it'll be worth it when we finish. STEM lab, 7th and 8th grade, I had them in the STEM lab doing ecosystems and the American Revolution. They were doing different 3D programs on the Z-Space machines. Then they were using the Google Expeditions in another area. And then at the Huddle stations, I was actually teaching them how to create websites. I provided them with a task list on what had to be on their website and what had to be on what page, and they're creating websites on the American Revolution and the ecosystem.
Can I ask, how do you clean the virtual reality glasses?
Clorox wipes,
Okay.
they're just plastic. I clean them after we use them every time. Clorox
Well, I
wipes.
was Sue with pink eye and everything else, I'm sitting here going, how do you do that?
I carry Clorox wipes with me. 8th grade, Mrs. Alberson came to me one day and she's like, I want to do a travel brochure with a book a story that we're reading. I don't even know how to create it. I said, well, we can create it using Google Drawing. I went in and showed them more kind of advanced tricks on different colors on your screen, how to take images and make them into different shapes. We just did all kinds of different things with it. And then they had to create a travel brochure using Google Drawing. Again, I provided them with a rubric so they knew what was going to be graded, what she was going to look for. And then Mrs. Dwarf did ask to use the hotspot. She was doing a program on flight and engineers. And so we actually got to do a virtual reality on flight and engineers. And I don't know if any of you had the chance to use the Google Expeditions. They're located at the junior high. We have 2 sets at Memorial as well. But if you want to contact me and come in and use them, it's kind of interesting to see how they work, and the teacher station, how the teacher can control where every student's looking in their class and stuff. Some other things that I helped with at the beginning of the year was setting up Reflex, which is a math fluency program, the map testing, Journeys, our new reading series. That was not an easy task. And the Waterford program for K through 2. Some goals I have for actually starting in January. I have, my first goal is my scheduling. I'm finding myself some days in 4 different buildings, and sometimes I go to one building to a different building and back to the same building. And so my goal for January is to set days where I'm gonna be at certain schools and which grade levels I'll be at those days, so they can provide me with what they're teaching, and then I can create something for them. Another goal is special education. I'd like to get them a little bit more involved, especially at the junior high in the STEM lab. I've talked to Mrs. Rhodes and Mrs. Harker. They were having a meeting tonight, and I said, just tell me ways you want me to get you involved. Do I need to provide you with professional development? What do I need to do to get you in there? Another thing, I know Mrs. Kinsman always did digital citizenship towards the end of the year. I would like to start it sooner, because I would like to get it in and expand it a little bit more. I'd like to bring the high school over to North School with the 1st and 2nd graders, and over to Stonington with the 1st and 2nd graders after seeing them interact. Talking to the high school, they think it would be very successful. They mentioned having a station place where they could do it and setting up different stations and then having the classes come into them rather than having us carry the materials to every class, which I thought was a good idea. And I'm always working on curriculum, technology curriculum alignment. I try to write down things that I'm doing in the different classrooms. And then when Jacob and I meet towards the end of the year, hopefully we can align, like, hey, we're doing in kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. And that is all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I stand in anybody's way, just holler at me. I can't stand in yours. Alright, so I just want to give you kind of a quick update. I've been a lot more 9-12 focused this year. I go all the way down to 7-12, but with our new STEM lab in the high school, most of my time has been spent there. A few things just to get started. This was a totally different change for me, but one big thing I wanted to do, I was just in the seats of those teachers just last year. I wanted to be consistent and give some sort of professional development every week. So each week I do that. I call it my Tech Training Thursdays. So for a half hour before school and a half hour after school every Thursday, I give a training on something in the STEM lab, something with our one-to-one. I've gotten some ideas from the teachers themselves on what they wanted. And overall, from beginning of the year to later in the year, I'm seeing more and more numbers every time, and it's been really nice to see that. And that's one area where it's not in my slideshow, but I wanted to make sure that that was kind of an early focus for me. My beginning of the year was really focused on getting one-to-one rolling at the high school. We just started last year's second semester with the freshmen. So this year we went freshman and sophomore, so about 400 Chromebooks got passed out during that very first week of school. In addition to those 400 that go home every day, we've got an in-class set available to pretty much anybody that wants them. And that's been, I think, a pretty big success. We're still obviously building. There's still some teachers that are getting more and more comfortable with using it. Some teachers are using it as simply as just a paper replacement. So you're taking things in PDFs that were previously done on type. You have, instead of giving a document packet 57 pages long, you can easily put out a PDF and students can work with that. To some teachers doing things that you could never do without the use of Chromebooks, like collaboration between different classes, using multimedia to present. So overall, I'm really happy with the way one-to-one is going at the high school. The big challenge for me this year has been our Hopper Foundation STEM Lab. We have a beautiful state-of-the-art lab that is really unrivaled, I think, anywhere in downstate Illinois. We've had people from all over the state come and are just blown away by what we're able to offer our students. So I wanted to kind of go through and highlight how that lab is being used so you can see how our investment's working. The first area I wanted to highlight is our makerspace. When I think makerspace, it's kind of like our engineering area. It's where we're able to actually create things. So our makerspace has been busy. Our makerspace is a combination of some 3D printing as well as a Glowforge is what you'll see in the middle there. I call it a Cricut on steroids. It's basically, if you know anybody that cuts out the Cricut vinyl decals, imagine instead of a blade, it's got a high-powered laser. So it's able to cut wood, it's able to cut leather, glass, and acrylic. That was actually coming through our home ec department. Mrs. Williams wrote a grant last year and was able to get that for her students. And we were able to get it now in the STEM lab, get it properly vented. So we've had already, if you've seen around social media, we've got these Taylorville Tornado Christmas ornaments out there. Those are from our business department. I was able to bring our business management classes in, teach them how to make a new product that took their school store from selling $3 worth of candy bars one day to selling over 200 ornaments in a week. So they're really learning a lot more about managing demand and trying to keep up with that. We also, the FFA kids you just saw coming here earlier today, they're going to be making the area awards. The interview competition is going to be at Taylorville this next week. And rather than hand out your standard, what you give out every year, we're going to give out custom, in-house made plaques that are custom to our Taylorville students. And those are actually going to be produced by members of the FFA. So we're really excited to be able to kind of leverage our makerspace to make things for ourselves. The other side I've been doing a lot of is 3D design. In the bottom right-hand corner there, you'll see a lot of students in the classroom. They're all learning with Tinkercad. You saw that with Mrs. Reindell. It's a very simple visual-based design program. Kids can pick it up in about a day or two of training. So I've trained world history classes, I've trained computer concepts, I've trained business classes, all across the curriculum and getting basic design, because then they can use that design in a wide variety of ways. Upper right-hand corner, you'll see some shields that are made in social sciences. They had to do some in-depth research about Greek hoplite soldiers, and then they would have to go in and use what they knew about the soldier to create their shield from scratch. So it really showed their understanding, taking it to the next level. On the left-hand side, you can see that little stand for the Oculus Rift handles. I gave my computer concepts kids a design challenge. I said, I want you to do a design survey of somewhere in the school and solve a problem. And I got some great solutions. And one student came to the STEM lab and said, these VR handles are all over the place. You need a stand for this. So from scratch, his group of 4 measured, created, and now we're going to be printing those for all 5 of our VR computers. So we're solving our own problems and making our own devices. We had students make holders for the Z-Space pens. We had people making storage solutions for teachers, cord cabling solutions. We had a wide variety of stuff coming out. So our makerspace is getting used. Our 12 3D printers, our Glowforge, it's really getting put to use. I'm really excited by that. The next part, I call it our STEM lab, and I put lab in parentheses because it really acts as a lab experience for a huge variety of classes. You can see here just a smattering of what's going on in the STEM lab. And where it works best, and what I've really been excited to do, is take the learning that you're used to, your traditional in-seat learning, and then extend that in the lab. So rather than the traditional, you have your notes, You have your review and your test. Now you can do your notes, your review, and then you have a lab where you get to experience that learning and then test. And just in communicating with students and teachers, it helps the material stick, it makes it more meaningful, and it gives them new ways to interact with it. You can see upper right hand corner, you've got our biology students. They learned their organelles, their structures of the cell. Then they came in Z-Space and actually took apart the cell, identified each organelle, looked at it in 3D, were able to describe what it looks like while holding it in their hand. Then below that, you've got some students using the periodic table of elements in full 3D. We had our physical science classes that were learning how the elements are organized based on their valence electrons, which is one thing to see in a book, but when you can actually take that element out and you can see the valence electrons surrounding it and see how they fit together, it makes sense. It's just an excellent lab opportunity. In the middle, you've got our physics students. They were able to cap off one of their physics units by doing a skee ball investigation. They had to set up a skee ball board and change the weight of the ball, change the force behind the ball, change the angle of the board. Something if you were to set it up in real life would take 2 hours to set up and you'd maybe be able to do it once. They're able to repeatedly change the variables and test the actual knowledge that they have, and then go take that knowledge to a test. And then the other area you kind of see towards the top, we've got our anatomage table, which I'll talk about a little more in detail in a little bit here. But that's where our veterinary science class was able to get in and use a little bit of our medical technology that you would think maybe only for anatomy and physiology, but actually leverage that to teach about the systems of, and they're looking at a dog and a cat system. And so they're, at the beginning of the year, learning about from the cellular level all the way up to the system level, and the actual students were using the table and presenting their systems of the body of the particular animal to the rest of their classmates. So it followed up their unit where they had learned about those. So it was one more chance to experience that hands-on. I've been really excited to find more and more ways to make that work for our teachers. I'd like to try to highlight a class for each of these sections. And for the lab portion, I think the perfect example would be anatomy and physiology. We've had some anatomy and physiology teachers come through the lab, and you talk about jaws on the floor. They are just amazed by the tools that our students have and are able to learn with. And I actually have one of those students in the audience today. If you want to introduce yourself real quick, you can just tell them a little bit about what we've done in the lab, and then I'll kind of follow up.
I'm Adria Gummy. I take anatomy and physiology at the high school, and I really like that you can not only see what you have to learn, but like the different angles, because it's just one thing to look at it in a book, and then there's a test, and then you have to do a lab, but you get to actually learn and see all the things that you have to know, and it actually sticks rather than memorizing it. So I just think it's like a really cool, not only opportunity, but tool to have, especially at our school. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. So, and actually she's in the picture in the right hand corner, so you can see her hard work. Our anatomy and physiology classes use two separate technologies quite a bit right now. The first, they use those Z-Space machines that we've seen that are augmented reality. We've got it's called a Human Atlas. It will allow them right now, they're studying bone structures. They can pull out individual bones from any part of the body or bone groups. And what me and Mrs. Koenig, the anatomy and physiology teacher, were so excited about is you can actually map out the bony landmarks, and they'll come up color-coded. So if you're in the medical field, you know how important it is. It's really bone. I mean, to be able to see all the processes, the fossae, all those, and be able to study them in full color, and then manipulate it and turn it around and say, oh, I have a left scapula. Well, how do I know it's a left scapula? Oh, the fossa is on this side because I've turned it. It really makes it stick for them. So you've got students there looking at the hand. They first started with shoulder to finger. This last week they're looking at pelvic girdle all the way down to foot. So they've been studying on the Z-Space. And then in the middle you'll see our anatomage, which is our kind of our prized possession. Our anatomage allows them to see, I always think of it like an autopsy table, the entire human body laid out, all the systems together. They're able to manipulate that entire skeleton to now see those bones that they saw in isolation on the Z-Space now as a whole human body, and it really helps them when they're studying. Typically I'll have, she'll take the students first to the anatomage, then to the Z-Space, and then allow them to kind of use the one that fits both best with their learning modality, which I think is great. They even just updated our anatomage table this last week, and now the anatomage table will identify all the bony landmarks and the muscle attachment points as well. So if you add that to what we have, it's pretty amazing.
I think we did a demonstration, you actually would touch the muscle and it would tell you what it was.
Yep, it'll identify down to the nerve, the muscle, and then we'll do it in location. So if I've got a human body cut open sagittally one way, in another view the other, it will identify it in both places. So it will identify no matter where you're at. You can animate blood flow. The more advanced those anatomy and physiology students get, the more this lab's going to work for them. So
And
I'm
how
really
much
excited.
access do they have to this? Can you come in before school, after school to work on it?
Yeah, I always tell them, and I've had a couple students take me up, that if you want to come in and work as a study tool, I'm always there during advisory. I'm always there that 8 to 8:30 period. And then every single unit, Mrs. Kinnig has been bringing them in as well, usually a day or 2 days before their testing period. So I've had a few students take up that offer and actually come in during that advisory period to take advantage of using that. The other kind of big area, in addition to kind of our science lab, is we've had a really good chance to give some experiences to social studies students, which I think is cool because you really don't think of a lab as offering much for humanities. But when you look at STEM, the T is technology, and technology can really enhance learning in any subject. And this is my background, so I've been really excited to provide social studies experiences to our department at THS. The big thing when I think experiences is our VR. The Google Expedition works really well for our grade school and middle school students. It doesn't really tend to get you very motion sick because it's like you're in a 360-degree picture. You're controlling, you turn, your picture typically isn't animated, you're viewing it. What we do at the high school with our Oculus Rift, you are living it. You wear a full-on headset and the room is mapped around you, and when you move, you are moving in a virtual environment. So you'll see in the middle there that a tomb in Egypt. When these students were studying Egypt, number one, we were able to use the Z-space so they could calculate the volume of a pyramid by holding in their hand and measuring it. Then we actually got to take them into the only tomb in the world with full-color hieroglyphics that still exists today, and they walked through it with a torch in their hand. As they looked around, if the hieroglyphic would light up blue, they would push a trigger, and it would explain what they're seeing right in their ears if they had a tour guide there. And the looks on kids' faces when they pop the mask off is priceless because, like, I just saw that. You did. And so that really made it more real for them. We were even able to get the anatomy on the fun. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, we've got a full range of specimens from Stanford University. We were able to get some mummies, some actual Egyptian mummies from about 2,000 years ago, where they were able to compare them medically and make conclusions, and they were able to determine, well, this person was more of a manual laborer. They weren't very important because their bones were worn down, or this child was more noble because his bones were fully formed. It looked like he never had to do work in his life. And to see them, to be able to draw those conclusions that you would typically never be able to do outside of maybe the museum point of view was really exciting for me as a teacher. We also, when we did ancient Rome, we were able to let them study the ruins of ancient Rome in Z-space, pull those ruins in front, look at them from every angle, find the commonalities, find the columns and the arches and things that carried through, then pop on the VR and go visit them the way they looked like thousands of years ago. So they were able to actually see what those ruins looked like when they were full. Then the coolest thing with that VR experience, it would then snap them in the modern day, where they could actually look around and see what it looked like now. So it was just an unbelievable experience for them. On the right-hand side, I was able to break out my old Legos, because I always like to add just kind of an extra station when students are finished. What else can we do? So we built an aqueduct. So we had students actually doing some minor engineering on the side. When they had finished their more serious exploration, they were able to kind of use what they had learned and do something a little bit fun. And the flexible seating in the lab was great for that. I was able to throw two giant tables together. They had to get the golf ball from way on top of the 3D printer safely down on top of the plate. Each class kind of worked on what the other class had done, so it was really neat to build on that. And then in the middle of the screen, you see we wait in that 2 billion miles. The current events class, I've had the luck and fortunate situation to be able to find some very present and very current things to take them through. They were able to go on a boat ride along with a Syrian refugee as they were trying to make it to safety. And then they were able to, that 2 billion miles, I threw up on the giant interactive screen. Think of it as a choose your own adventure where you're trying to survive as an immigrant. You start out in Syria, you flee for your safety, and you end up about 14 choices later, hopefully somewhere in safety in Germany. and it gave a great perspective to those students before they did their study on refugees, because I was honest with them. It's really hard to walk in someone's shoes in Taylor, Illinois when you think of a refugee from somewhere around the world. But once they put on that VR set, once they've watched those situations and seen those hard decisions they had to make, then the next week they had some very well informed and very good conversations on Syrian refugees. So that's the kind of experiences that we're able to give our students in social sciences. What I found what works best is station studies. So we'll have like 10 students here, 10 students here, and 10 students here, give them a full day, and then let them rotate. It works really well as far as educational practices go. And then the class I wanted to highlight there was my Modern American History class. They have done an awesome job. These are my seniors. And I polled them, and the one thing that they told their teacher they wanted to do before they graduated high school was to come back to the STEM lab, if that tells you how much of an effect this had on them. The two big things that they did, number one, when they were doing the civil rights era, they did a document study on one side of the room on Z-Space computers, and then they marched with Martin Luther King Jr. via VR. They were able to look down, and I think the most powerful part is you look down and your hands are African American. So it really sets it apart. You're treated very differently. You pick up a sign, you march with the sanitation workers in Memphis, you look at him through the window, and then you hear him assassinated. And then I think the most powerful moment after this happens, the same place where you are peacefully protesting is now just engulfed in flames in a riot as you're watching Bobby Kennedy's speech trying to get the nation pulled back together. And as you're peacefully watching, a police car rolls up behind you and demands you throw your hands in the air. You can see our student right there. That's Olivia Pruitt with her hands in the air. Nothing's forcing her to do that, but I would say 99% of students immediately do this. And the second they get out of the experience, they say, I didn't do anything wrong. And Mr. Wilson and I said, exactly, and now you understand. And we actually had a parent during parent-teacher conferences come in and say, thank you so much for giving my student that experience, because she literally came home that day and said, I finally understand what it's like to be African American. I can't imagine what they went through. That's just jawed. As a social studies teacher for me, like I could never do that with a book. I couldn't have done that with a video. That had to be the technology that we got right now. And then the other really, really exciting experience we did is we did a 3-day space race experience. The mission to the moon is the highlight of Mr. Wilson's study of the 60s. It's kind of like what we can accomplish when we all work together. So we were able to take his living museum, because Mr. Wilson has more artifacts on the space race than you could possibly imagine, to create. You can see Jagger Moore in the corner. The students were interacting with the actual lunar module and the capsule on our touchscreen. On the other side, we had the moon on Google Earth, where they were investigating where they landed, looking through newspapers from the time, playing games from the time. Then they would rotate and they would actually launch in our VR above the into the Apollo 11 on the Saturn V rocket and accomplish the moon mission. 100% photorealistic. They even had to, when they got to space, they would have to capture the Apollo lunar module successfully using the exact same controls that the astronauts would have, and they were having a really hard time doing it, and they came out and oh my gosh, that was so hard. And again, exactly, imagine doing that with everybody's life on the line. And then the last section they would take on Z-Space, they looked at rocketry and how we had developed from our first satellite launch into space to the Saturn V rocket, which is still the most powerful thing we've ever built, to the spaceship craft that we use today. And it really gave them a sense of accomplishment and scale and how important this moon landing was, to the point where, number one, we were able to get some really positive feedback in our local media, and this is now spinning into the possibility of having a STEM-based space exploration class where students get to look at what the development of the space program meant politically, what it means scientifically, and being able to create an entire curriculum based around this one experience. It was so successful, so we were really excited about that too. So for what's next for me, a few big things that I'm looking at. Number one is continuing to get our teachers used to one-to-one, making sure that teachers know what's available. It's not just a typewriter, it's a wonderful tool that does so much more than that. I really want to get a toolbox down for each grade area where if you want to do a project or an idea or a concept in your class, you know all the tech tools that are available to you and you can just bring those up very easily. And then we're working on some professional development that we create in-house on some technology, where we're able to offer our teachers some PD hours for taking home developed classes on things like Google Forms, Google Sites, Google Classroom, so they don't have to go outside to get those PE hours. They can actually be created here within the district. So, thank you.
And then we will be adding that page in the STEM lab itself too. We have the 3D modeling. We're bringing the 3D modeling class on for a building program this next semester. We're going to tie the technology piece into our vocational programs is where we're at. We're going to be adding that into our curriculum as well. But you can see by the looks of these programs, these are all interdisciplinary situations, right? The Google Expeditions are fantastic things. Matter of fact, when you saw that third grade class, that was the Golden Gate Bridge out of their reading series. So we're actually to be able to take actual things that are in our curriculum and apply it to where students were at. It's quite interesting, and this just isn't just goof around opportunities. You know, the Google Expedition, the teacher actually controls where you can go, okay, and what you can see, okay. When I was in that classroom, a young man, that was our first day. That was our initial voyage of Google Expedition, and a young man said, "Hey, I'm on a buoy." Well, no, we're not going to be on a buoy, okay, but it's just things of that technology, that curiosity of where we're at. But these are real world applications that our kids are going to be exposed to. When Dr. Miser toured, what did you say you could have been done in dental school?
Dental school in 3 years instead of 4. It takes forever to study the human body. You're going to find that out. That is a big plus for you.
Yeah, when you take a look at that, multiple classes use that. I wouldn't highly recommend. We had 3 classes in there one day. That was quite a deal. But it all worked out because of the organization within those programs. But I think you're starting to see the STEM labs enhance the opportunity for kids. A lot of it takes place in the regular ed classroom before they come into the STEM program. But this is what these kids are going to be faced with out there. And we're really looking at, in terms of the special ed aspect, and we're looking at some of our students that struggle with the technology, the different experiences, the different opportunities. They may perk an interest in what we do. This is our first go around with 2 tech integration persons, because when you have the things that we have, you need the people that are going to work with the staff and the administration and the students as well to be able to provide these experiences for kids. We will be talking about what Mr. Kodiak talked about. Mrs. Bruley will be talking to you along with the technology component next month on micro-credentialing. That's the aspect where we're creating our own professional development for our teachers so that they can earn that type of thing PD-wise. But you can see there's an awful lot going on in the regular ed classrooms as well as our technology. If you haven't done the Oculus Rift, I mean, that's pretty an interesting piece of stuff to travel on the rocket. It really does put that in place. So, job well done. In terms of that.
I really think it's amazing that they're getting to pique their interest in things that they could never ever have thought possible in Taylorville. I mean, you're able to go to any part of the world you want and learn a different thing, and we're gonna turn students out that are going in careers that we would have never guessed that they'd be going to. I mean, most of us in college start to pique your interest with where you want to be, and you guys are getting a head start by 5 and 6 years and being ahead of time. It's a great thing.
You talk about Project Lead the Way, which we're looking to expand. You talk about projects. I was over there, and actually we had a project designed to make a clip for wheelchairs, to be able to put tables on wheelchairs. That's coming out of our 8th grade students. Taking a look at a problem and solving those types of things are really, really good. I think the more we bring our students together with collaborating, the younger ones with the older ones, you know, all it is a bus, right? We can send a bus to the high school and a bus to where we need to go, right? We've done it. We actually walked our 5th grade over there. The sky's the limit for opportunities for our kids to do those things. The one-to-one has gone well. Next year we will be one-to-one 1st through 11th grade. Okay, and that's been the plan. It's all naturally falling together in terms of that situation, that by buying 2 sets of Chromebooks every year, one for a 7th grade group, and then next year it'll be for another set of kids. So it's going as designed. But you know, you need to think, and this is why I mentioned that, the people that believe in our educational program, without them, if you happen to see these folks, tell them thanks. Or students, tell them thanks for these opportunities that they're providing you to open up other doors and other things. We're blessed to have that community support for our programs. So, moving on.
All righty. Thank you again for the presentation. Those were very good. All right, next we'll go to the first reading of the ISB.
These are just on record this evening. No action is required. We will pick it up next month.
All right, then we'll move on to the superintendent.
Yes, I just have a brief report. A couple of things that we have going on. Just a second here, Mr. There we go. I did indicate Mr. Walters is working with the roofing company on the Pepsi facility right now, and he's working with the insurance company on that to get that building shored up. That was the building that we had the most damage on, was the roof over the maintenance building. That's being addressed. Needed to be addressed before the rain arrives this week. I don't think we can put any fingers in the holes, can we, Mr. Kunzman?
No, sir.
No, sir. And then we did have, as I indicated, we had a tree fall on top of the science wing, small punctures in the roof. That'll be addressed as well. The tree's off. You know, basically, as we indicated, the schools were relatively unscathed. How, I don't know. When you look at that tornado, particularly next over in the Taylorville High School area, I don't know, but it was. So, you know, we're getting things back together. The administration will be attending with Mike Cruz. It's probably a pretty good idea. We're going to have an incident management training session December 18th, working on specific incidents that may involve schools and so the administration will be handling that situation. Mr. Walters and Mr. Westrick just had the ROE and the state fire inspector in to go through our buildings. I'm happy to report that our buildings, as those gentlemen indicated, were some of the cleanest, most well-maintained buildings they've seen. That speaks volumes for our maintenance staff and our custodial staff. You know, we relatively don't have a whole lot of issues that we have to address other than what's documented by the architect. And Mr. Westrick and Mr. Walters are working with the administrators on getting that addressed, and we'll send in our report to get that clear. A couple of calendar items for you. This Sunday, we have the Vespers concert at 4 o'clock at Taylorville Cafeteria. Remember, the first semester ends December 21st. It's hard to believe that's next Friday. We are down to 9 days. We have used 2 emergency days. In terms of that situation, we have 8. We will make up 8 if we use 8. So far, we've only used 2. It's kind of a weird weather pattern this year. I don't know what that's going to look like. Christmas break is the 22nd through January 7th. And then we do have teachers back on January 4th for an institute program that they have with that situation. Other than that, Mr. Hendrick, that's all I have.
All